Hello, my name is Chelsea Lyons. I am a two-time black belt world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I hold two belt titles for Fight to Win, and I've placed top 3 in the world at every belt level, including a world champion at blue belt.
My name is Katie, and I am a mixed martial artist. Uh, I have been a blue belt world medalist. I've done a lot of things. I mean, for me, accomplishments like going to Thailand, creating multiple businesses since I was 16.
Hi, my name's Elena. I've been training MMA since 2019. I currently train under my head coach, Jessica Miramontes, and my jiu-jitsu coach is Chelsea Lyons.
My name is Jessica Miramontes. I'm currently the head coach of Unaffiliated Athletics. My martial arts are all of them. I've competed in almost everything: boxing, MMA, jiu-jitsu, Kukso Wan, karate, you name it. I've done it since I was 8 years old. I am a 7th place world ranked fighter in the world at 125 pounds in Sanda. I was a 3-time national champion for Sanda. Qualified for the Beijing 2008 Olympics, and I was an undefeated MMA fighter, 3-0 at the time. Oh, and then I won a bronze medal at the Pan American Games. Forgot about that one.
I have been a martial artist now for 13 years, and there are two things that really got me to start martial arts back in 2010. So one was I had seen a fight between Gina Carano and Caitlin Young, and it was the first time I had ever seen two females fighting in the cage. And when I saw it, I just remember being extremely excited and very curious about how to enter something like that myself, and just astonished that it was even allowed to be happening. And on top of that, they were airing it for everybody to see. So I continued to think about martial arts nonstop. But what actually motivated me was I was coming home one night about 1 a.m. and I was held at gunpoint for the second time in life. So for me, I took a couple of days. I was very angry. I don't even think that I was scared. I think I was more pissed off that somebody who was bigger than me actually needed a gun when they probably could have just manhandled me at that point. So it encouraged me to, one, stop talking about what I want to do and go do it. And two, start putting myself in positions where if something were to happen where they wanted more than just my belongings, that I would be able to handle myself. So fast forward a little bit, I believe the universe aligned me with that dusty flyer that I found at a place that I was working on a shelf. I picked the flyer up, I walked into this gym and I said, "Hi, my name's Chelsea. You guys fight here? I want to fight." So they kind of laughed and shook it off. But they were like, "If you want to join our membership," they let me know the pricing for the month and so on. And honestly, like I started training that day that I walked in, and I have not stopped training since.
I have been doing MMA for about 9 years. It's really gonna show my age now. I started MMA. I was going through some traumatic things, and I wanted to find something that I know I could be good at, and here we are.
I started training martial arts when I lived abroad. I lived in South Korea and I was put in a position where I was not able to defend myself. Someone else grabbed hold of me and I was not physically strong enough to get away from them. So in that moment, I decided that it wasn't going to happen again and that there would never be a time when my body would limit me from protecting myself. So after that, I knew I needed to do something to be able to defend myself. And at that point, a cute girl friend of mine asked me to come with her to a Muay Thai class, and I cannot say no to that.
I've been in martial arts since I was about 8 years old. My mom made me go. She gave me a Game Boy if I would go. Lucky for me, I went and I loved it. It was absolutely awesome. But then later on, I continued martial arts throughout my childhood, all the way up until I was about 16. Took a little break. When I got to college, I went into more martial arts. Kukso One, it's like a Korean martial art. And I met a man named Ian Lee while I was training. And he asked me if I wanted to go to the Olympics. So I did stand-up. After that, made the national team with the Olympics, with Pan American Games. And then after that, decided I wanted to do MMA. And I did MMA after that. And then after a while, I took a break from everything. And then eventually I ended up doing MMA and coaching.
How many female training partners did I have when I first started? In regards to MMA, 0.
When I first started training, it was just the one girl who invited me to come with her. It was a group of mostly foreigners who were living in South Korea at the time. So there were other women there, but we were all kind of in a foreign land. There were not that many of us. So we all were kind of having similar experiences.
0. When I first began training, actually that's not true. I had one every once in a while, every few months maybe. We would travel from town to town to visit each other to maybe get to train together.
When I first started, I walked in, there were no girls. As I trained within the first month, occasionally I would see this one girl, and she didn't last. And that would kind of be a pattern that I would see for my first three or 4 years of training, is that a female would come in, I'd be very excited about it. And then within less than a month, like I would never see them again. So I think maybe in the first 3 years of training martial arts, I had 3 training partners that were female, and none of them are training now.
When I first started training, there wasn't really anything that kept me specifically because I was a woman. Because I was a foreigner at the time, there were only specific gyms we were allowed to go to. There were only certain times, like we could only train on Saturday afternoons. We got every other weekend with the gym. It limited the people who could train with us because of gym politics in Korea. But at the time, it was mostly being a foreigner as opposed to being a female.
The obstacles that challenged me when I first began were the fact that what I was doing didn't really exist for women. I kind of was making it up as I went along. There weren't really too many role models. There wasn't really a path. It was just, I enjoyed doing this and I just wanted to do it all the time. So how do I make that happen? I had never really met any other female fighters. I had seen them on the internet, but that was about it.
The only opposition that I truly found as a female in the beginning is that you weren't taken seriously. A lot of times, they would train with you, but the guys would either not go hard or go way too hard, which I kind of thrived on, so I'm okay with that. So anytime you would tell them hey, I'm ready to fight, or I want to compete, you would only have maybe 1 to 2 people that would support you. But when it comes to this in the beginning, that's all you need. The other problem, or the other opposition I would face, is actually finding female competitors to go against. So a lot of the time, for me, it was no problem, but some people would see that as an opposition you face, is I had to fight against the guys more often than not.
I have been fortunate enough that when I first started, I didn't really have a lot of the obstacles that my other female friends have had. I've been lucky enough not to have too many of that. As we went further along my journey, I have had some obstacles. Going back to kind of what I said earlier, this is really going to show my age. When I first started, social media wasn't what it is today. So in order for us to learn anything, we had to ask questions or wait for the answer to be given to us. So a lot of the things that I had to learn the hard way. Again, I've been fortunate enough that a lot of my female friends, they had a really bumpy road. They started before me. And so I started shortly after them. So mine wasn't as traumatic as theirs. I mean, there have been some instances when I do go with guys, when I first started, how they would rough me up. But then they opened up that door and I was like, okay, bet. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to handle myself to get justice, I guess is the word I'm going to say. But other than that, I'm a kind of person, I guess I walk around and you don't fuck with that girl kind of thing.
I have definitely had training partners treat me differently, especially guys who are very early on in their fighting journey. People who come on their first day feel like they can't hit a girl, so they just won't throw punches properly or won't throw real kicks, or they'll apologize for like landing a very weak little tap punch. So it makes it difficult to train with those people if they don't take you seriously as an opponent.
When I first began, I trained with a lot of grown men. They at first minimized me, and then over time, I proved that I was just a mean human. And they began to realize like they better take me seriously or I'm going to hurt them. I distinctly remember breaking a man's nose when I was grappling, just because he wasn't taking me seriously and he was trying to like tease me and taunt me, and I punched him in the face and broke his nose. Didn't really make fun of me after that. I had to fight a lot to get what I wanted, the respect that I wanted. Yeah.
I believe that misogyny not only exists in the world of martial arts, it exists in the world. So if it's going to exist in the world, it's definitely going to exist in a world where it's been dominantly male. You know, it's been for men. I mean, dating back how long? When people consider fighting, they think of men. So there's definitely misogyny in martial arts, but I also believe that the amount of that you're going to face depends on where you choose to continue to place yourself while training. And I think all females, not all females, I think a good number of the females who enter martial arts may have to go through that in order to find their place.
Yes, 100%.
I do believe misogyny exists in the MMA world. I think it's interesting. It ebbs and flows. When I first started, it was more of like a circus act. It wasn't necessarily like a big thing. And because I was attractive, I kind of got away with more. It's far more accepted now. However, there is a massive pay discrepancy, I've noticed, which is an issue. Also, the way people view women's MMA is not necessarily in the same echelon of men, which is unfortunate, in my opinion.
Yes, I definitely believe that misogyny exists in the MMA world. I think it's hard to avoid. It exists in the world, so it's going to exist in fighting. Especially fighting, it's something that's been traditionally men, I think up until like 2010, Dana White was saying that he would never have women in the UFC. We've only been in the UFC for like 10 years now, so it's a fairly new development. So yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot of growing to do. I feel like women's MMA is kind of in its first generation of fighters, moving into the second generation. So I think that men's fighting has come a lot farther just because it's had more time.
The inequalities, I believe, exist. Yes, it's interesting. It doesn't appear in MMA as much as it does in sports like boxing. In boxing, professional women fight 2-minute rounds, 1-minute rest, as opposed to their male counterparts who fight 3-minute rounds, 1-minute rest. And so, but in MMA, it was this way in MMA initially, but they changed it to make it equal. So now women fight 5-minute rounds just like the men, but it wasn't always this way. The other inequalities I really would focus on is I would say there's a massive pay inequality. You don't see a lot of female fighters making the same amount of money as men, which is unfortunate. When I first started, I actually made more than most men did, but I think that had to do more with my looks rather than my ability.
I really don't want to say something rat out my friends, but a lot of guys think that women should be in the kitchen and shouldn't be fighting because it's not interesting. I disagree. I think anytime you see women fight, it's the most ferocious thing you've ever seen. It's like letting two cats out of a bag and go at it, just wanting to kill each other. And I think it's great.
I definitely think there are inequalities that female martial artists face today, and fighters as well. The inequalities being pay, obviously, but that's such a worldwide thing. Like, it's just not in fighting, but I'm seeing it continue to shift and change. And me personally, I like to look at the positive aspects and be aware of the others. I think one is there's still a good number of people who won't even pay to go see females fight. But I also know, like, the further that we go year after year, the more time that martial arts has under its belt as a whole, the more that line starts to fade between men and women, both in the excitement of seeing them fight, as well as the excitement of, I'll put my money down on this because it's going to be really good to watch. And I may be partial, but sometimes, because we have to fight harder and we have to fight for more just to be seen and heard, sometimes those female fights are more exciting.
I'm sure that there are inequalities that female fighters face. I know some of the best fighters, like Valentina and Amanda Nunes, are probably getting paid normal amounts, great money. But for the other female fighters, I don't think that they're doing as well. I think that, like, you have high paid fighters and low paid female fighters, where with men's you might have some people who are making an average income in the middle. You can be a good fighter and still survive, but to be a female fighter, you have to be one of the best.
I never experienced discrimination as a female fighter because of my looks at the time. I was really pretty. I was I was well spoken. I was kind of arrogant and fun. People enjoyed that. But as a coach, most definitely, as a coach, I noticed that, like, I've actually had the word said, "You'll make a great lady coach one day," said to me. A lot of times people will treat me like I'm the cleaning lady when they see me vacuuming the floor or something like that. Not that, like, I'm actually running the program. They're oftentimes trying to defer to a man, asking where the man is to explain the things to them. I've experienced a lot of discrimination as a coach, not necessarily as a fighter.
I haven't really had a chance to get out there. You could kind of say that's discrimination just because there's no one else to go against. So obviously, if there's discrimination, everyone else in my weight division has already fallen victim to it and dropped out. I will not be so easily swayed.
Again, I've been fortunate enough that people at least don't say it publicly to me. They don't hate me as they do a lot of my friends. I don't know how else to say that. I don't know, honestly. I don't pay attention to them, I guess.
I definitely have dealt with discrimination, more so in the beginning. I think that, I believe that I've come to a place where I've really worked hard to make a name for myself, and sometimes not even realizing that's what I was doing, just being in love with martial arts and pouring myself into it. So definitely in the beginning, a lot of discrimination in the sense that you're going to encounter different types of martial artists, different types of coaches, different types of gym owners, just as a person or a practitioner, and definitely as a female. So I dealt with a lot of that more so in the beginning, and would end up shifting to multiple gyms, not too many, just 2 or 3 times, trying to find my own space. And I don't even know that I was aware of it in the beginning. I would encounter some situations that wouldn't even start to ring a bell within me of what was truly happening until weeks after it had happened. And then I believe I really started to understand it when I walked into Marcelo Garcia Dallas and finally understood what it was like to not be experiencing that, to be experiencing a healthy environment, or an environment that really supports females as well.
I think that MMA fans look for exciting fights. So if they can see a knockout in a women's fight, they're going to be just as excited as a knockout in a men's fight. I don't know the statistics on how many women get knockouts versus men get knockouts. But I think men are still more excited to watch the male fights. There's usually only like 1 or 2 female fights per card per like 10 men fights. So clearly there's more interest in the male fighters. Otherwise, we would have more even numbers represented.
Yes, I do. I do think that, like I said earlier, a lot of people think women should be in the kitchen, making food, cooking, cleaning, and let the men fight.
MMA fans, for sure. Okay. Because MMA fans don't just consist of practitioners. They consist of people who are fans, don't actually go through the training, don't actually experience any of this, but have a lot of opinions about what we are or are not doing, both as martial artists and females. So I definitely think there are differences in opinions. I believe that used to the majority kind of fell towards like, what are the females even doing here? Like, they should be holding a ring card or they should be like cheering on the other fighters. But I believe, and I'm seeing for myself, that the more we go forward, that's starting to shift, and it's shifting in a major way. And on top of that, I also believe, once again, that it's the environment you put yourself in. So the environment you put yourself in is either going to help you grow as a female martial artist, or it's really going to make you start questioning everything you believe that you can actually do as a female martial artist.
I think MMA fans. MMA fans are. It depends, because if you speak of MMA fans as like the uneducated MMA fan, I think yes. I think the educated MMA fan, they tend to understand like what it takes to do all of this. They take it a little more seriously. However, the uneducated fan, I would say, they oftentimes kind of attach almost a pornographic element to the entire entity of women's MMA. So it's unfortunate.
I do feel accepted by the MMA fan base. I feel currently like a fraud, because I have yet, in my opinion, yet to prove myself. I don't have a problem where people think little of me. I have a problem where people think very high of me. So I have the reverse effect, and that's what we're working on this year, is making that become a reality.
My experience with fans in the MMA community is probably just in the beginning. I haven't had the opportunity to like build up a fan base or anything since I am not a professional fighter or anything yet. In my experiences, when I've had competitions, they had split divisions. So they have like one area for all the men that are competing, and then they have one area for the women and children, which is my zone. So they kind of keep it separate in that way. And spectators can choose if they want to watch the real fights or they want to come over and watch the women's and children fights. Other than that, the only fan interaction I've had would be more on social media if I'm posting fight-related things. And I think this gets into another question of yours is like, how do looks involve with female fighters? I think you can definitely get more fans if you're a female fighter, if you are conventionally attractive. And if you post on Instagram, maybe if you post a couple bikini pictures, that's how you're going to get some men to follow you. That's how you're going to get the fans. I think the way that we have things now with social media and being an influencer, it is being attractive for a female fighter is a lot more important than it is for a male fighter.
When I was fighting, did I feel accepted by the MMA fan base? When I was fighting, at the time, I perceived it as yes, but I didn't understand why they were accepting me. It had nothing to do with me fighting. It had everything to do with the way that I looked and what people wanted from me, I suppose, is the best way to describe that. Yeah. Again, there's a really grotesque and dark side of MMA that people do not want to wish or admit exists, as far as it is for women. But yeah.
I do. I feel accepted by. It's a strange question, right? Do you feel accepted by the fan base? I haven't put a lot of weight into that, and maybe that's why it's come out so well for me, because instead of worrying or focusing on if the fans really appreciate, like, what I'm doing, acknowledge me as a martial artist, I put all of my weight into becoming the best martial artist possible, and also making sure that when I go out there and I do compete, that I put on a show. And I've also like been the person who from the beginning was like, man or female, like, let's go. So I think sometimes people are even more excited about that because it's just not something you see all the time. So I definitely believe the fans have accepted me just from not expecting the feedback, but receiving feedback on such a large amount that I don't expect. So I'm very aware when it comes in that these guys are all giving me very positive feedback. And then even having students who, the further we go in martial arts, the more common it's becoming just socially. And I'll hear from students or coaches like, oh, I ran into this person and they said you don't know them, but they know who you are. And they love watching you do jujitsu and compete and stuff. So I definitely feel like I have a good fan base that believes in me.
I have had promoters reach out just after seeing me and ask for me to come fight for them with no knowledge of what experience or what skills that I have. So that is clearly just from them looking at me and seeing, oh, she would look good on a poster, so we're going to ask her to come fight for us.
Unfortunately, yes. A lot of the times I've seen a lot of my interactions with fans and promoters, they tended to only be really interested in the way that I looked. I remember I was being asked to do a Bud Light ad in a bikini. I'd be posing with the belt as if I was a ring girl carrying the championship belt for this promotion. So yeah.
Going back to what I'm saying, I have the reverse effect compared to a lot of my friends, and I am ashamed to say that yes, a lot of promoters like me because of the way I look. And I feel guilty, but at the same time, that's my blessing, and I am aware of that. And like I said, I have such a high bar that everyone sees me at, and that is my goal for this year, to make sure that I am exactly who everyone thinks I am.
I would love to say yes, because I honestly, I don't know. I don't know because it's never been presented to me like that. But I do know that promoters have used myself and maybe the competitor I'm going against as their main card. And the feedback that they received from that, I don't know if it's looks or abilities, but why choose? And not in an egotistical way, just in a like, aren't we all beautiful in some way to somebody, right? So why do we even have to decide like these 40 people say we don't look good and these 40 people say we look good, so put them in tight gearing, like get them out there to perform, right? I think just, I think I haven't really experienced that. And if I had, I didn't know because I was just so excited that they were putting us out there that I didn't pay attention to it. I've definitely never been on the negative side of that. Like nobody has ever told me like, oh, you don't fit what we're looking for. Or, oh, we want to put this person instead because they have more followers, more viewers. Like I personally have not experienced that, but I'm sure some of the women have. But hopefully like the further it continues to go, they never have to experience that. Everybody just wants to see a good fight, really.
I think that the uneducated MMA community tends to favor the more attractive women as opposed to the unattractive women, which is so unfortunate because some of the most incredible humans actually in the sport don't get to to have the same kind of boost or support that they deserve?
I do media, I do marketing, so this is a great question. I'm not gonna lie, having two pretty girls fight does make a lot of money, comparatively. However, I have to say that there are a lot of phenomenal female athletes that don't have that image part down per se, but are phenomenal fighters. And I think it's sad how we don't give them the credit that they deserve.
I think there's definitely value in being attractive. Women's MMA seems to have a lot of queer culture in it. So there are a lot of women who are not traditionally feminine. I don't think anyone looks at Chris Cyborg or Amanda Nunes and says, oh, yeah, that's the peak of female beauty. But those two women are the top of their class. I think if you can be a champion, it doesn't matter as much. But if you are anywhere below the top, being attractive is going to matter. Getting sponsors, getting people to follow you on Instagram, getting promoters does depend on your appearance. People would rather watch two pretty girls scrap in a cage than two girls who look like guys. But just have less experience. Everyone knows the karate hottie. Like, even her nickname is based off being attractive.
I think when you got two good-looking guys that look like Spartan gods, right, fighting, they do well. They make a lot of money. And I think that if you had two female fighters that were gorgeous, I don't think it's the same. I think that would be over-sexualized for sure. And oddly enough, they wouldn't make a lot of money like the guys would.
I think the media has done a better job than they ever have of equalizing the sex appeal aspect of male versus female fighters situations, of like in regards to how you perceive them as an athlete. They do a much better job of presenting the women as athletes as opposed to objects. And so during the time of the infancy of MMA, it was a lot of like looking at how women were objects. But the unfortunate truth is now with social media, I've noticed that there's a lot of things, like very weird things like wiki feet that exist for women, which is fucking weird. There's social media sites on Instagram or pages on Instagram that are dedicated solely to the way women look in their bikinis before fights, and basically like suggestive poses, and they tend to get a lot more attention than their less fortunate looking friends, I suppose.
Yes. Yes, I believe that because the media emphasizes sex, period. Like, just in my opinion, like, sex sells, right? And I think a lot of people know that. Do I support that? Not necessarily. Am I against it? Not necessarily. I believe, like, people want to emphasize what's going to bring viewers, and honestly, the promoters are always going to emphasize what brings more money to their pocket, right? And what brings more interest. And so I believe, like, there's definitely a part of that, but I don't think that's the biggest selling point. I think the biggest selling point is, do you put on a good show? How good are you at fighting? Can you maintain even through the training to get to the stage to perform? And then if they think you're sexy, like, well, congratulations.
I think the media, like, values the sex appeal of both fighters. Like, men are not allowed to wear shirts when they compete, ever. They can wear their shorts, but I don't think UFC fighters have the option of being covered up for the dudes. So you kind of have to show off your body in some way if you're a fighter. The women have the option to wear, like, skirts and a tank top, so they don't have to show their whole body to succeed. But you can make it in the sport without sexualizing yourself. But it's hard to get fans and to make money without sexualizing yourself.
I personally have not ever been assaulted. However, I have been manipulated or I've been coerced into trying to do things but I was able and smart enough and strong enough to shut that shit down immediately. I have had coaches who've wanted to sleep with me multiple times, who basically threatened and gave me ultimatums on my career. I've had promoters that wanted me to wear more suggestive clothing. I've had a lot of things that shouldn't have happened. But I know of people, and I have heard of other incidents with other people, and it still goes on today, of coaches committing assaults, training partners committing assaults. It is rampant. MMA is filled with a lot of different types of wounded and hurt people, and what has happened is that you are arming people with the ability to hurt others, and not creating a system of accountability to keep these people, accountable for their actions and responsible.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have been assaulted by training partners, coaches. It They're like we talked about earlier, there aren't a lot of females who train mixed martial arts, or even those who want to fight. And those who want to fight need even more training to make sure that when they go into a ring, into a cage, that they are capable of hurting the other person before the other person hurts them. And when you do that training, you need a lot of one-on-one time with a lot of people, and sometimes things happen that shouldn't.
I've never experienced any type of assault or misbehavior from a coach or anyone who was in a position of power over me. I'm very fortunate for that. I did originally train at a different gym than I am currently at. It wasn't even bad, but it was not as safe as the gym that I'm currently at. Because of why I started training, I was not always comfortable in jiu-jitsu rolling with strange dudes that I didn't know. I have had a couple encounters with other training partners where maybe you could feel them getting not being comfortable with jiu-jitsu. There are positions in jiu-jitsu where it can be sexual or it could look sexual, but we're trying to fight each other, so we're not gonna make it that way. But if some dude pauses while you have him in guard and just kind of looks down at you, then you can kind of tell what they're thinking about, and they're not always focused on the jiu-jitsu. So it's happened from people my equal who I was able to then avoid. I haven't had a whole gym or a coach put me in an awkward position.
I have, and it mostly pisses me off to acknowledge that it was an assault with all of the skills that I now hold. The first MMA gym that I walked into, within less than a month, I was training for a fight, they'd found a girl that I could fight against. So there were 2 rooms set up, a main training room, and then in the connected room we had an octagon to practice in. And the owner he would bring us in there one at a time out of class to get some rounds in, especially if we're preparing for a fight as well, because he was. And he pulled me in there one evening while I was training, and there was nobody in there. And he started working different ground and pound positions with me. And he got me into a full mount, which I was still learning how to full mount escape, and still learning wait, what do they call this? A full mount escape? And he held me down in a position, and he's like, hey, what do you do if this happens? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I was so young and fresh in this and excited. So I'm really thinking this guy is trying to help me, right? Because I've already showed up with a little bit of trauma, and I'm like, this person's gonna help me get past that. But instead, he fed on that. And so he was asking me what do you do this? I'm like, oh, maybe bring my arm in or turn to my side. And then it went further, and then he started like, oh, what do you do if I do this? And all of a sudden he started like kissing my ear, kissing my neck, and started grabbing me a little tighter. And I tried to move, and I realized like I couldn't move. I've never experienced that. I grew up, like, we had street fights, like all that, I guess. I had never fully experienced somebody who actually was a practice fighter, put me in a position where I couldn't move. So in that moment, luckily I'm very loud. So I used my voice, and the people in the other room, like, it kind of got quiet. So I think he realized, and he's like, oh, you need to calm down. I was like, you need to calm the fuck down. Sorry. But, I just let him know. I'm like, you need to get the fuck up off me, because at least I still had my voice, right? I grabbed my stuff and I left. And that actually led me more to jujitsu. So I grabbed my stuff and I left. And it's really strange, because thinking you're a strong person, even before like really diving into martial arts, you would think you would handle that situation better. Like you would just like start popping off on them or something. And I didn't know how to take it. I remember all the things running through my head, like, oh, I've only been here a month. I'm the only female. These guys are probably going to, like, think that I'm trying to start something in their gym, and nobody's going to, help me out. So I just grabbed my stuff and left. And like a couple of weeks later, my jiu-jitsu coach called me, and he was like, hey, we haven't seen you in class. We just want to make sure, you're enjoying your membership. And I don't know why, but I'm glad I did. I just opened up to him about what happened. And he basically let me know, like, yeah, that guy's a terrible person, and like, he's not really here anymore. You could really use jiu-jitsu now more than ever. And I was like, you know what? I think he's right, because I didn't want to quit. Like, I'm not one to just quit. So I went back. I started training. I started doing more jiu-jitsu, still doing judo, Muay Thai. But I just deep dove into jiu-jitsu because I had never experienced something like that, where I could not move and could not fight back. So yeah, I'd say I've definitely experienced something like that. And it was the first person I had trusted to help me on my martial arts journey. So I'm really glad to be a female in this, in martial arts, who can help other females never have to experience that.
My opinion on the phrase, you fight like a girl. It used to be an insult. But nowadays, when you see girls fight, that's a compliment. In my opinion, girls just let it all out when they fight, no matter it's jiu-jitsu, MMA, boxing. There's no holding back. And I think that's awesome.
I've actually never heard someone use the phrase fight like a girl in real context. I've never actually heard anyone say the phrase like run like a girl or punch like a girl, any of that. I know the idea is that people are trying to put you down by saying you're doing it like a girl, or you're being prissy, or not being tough enough, I think, is generally the context. So I don't think anyone says you fight like a girl and means it as a compliment.
The phrase "you fight like a girl," I come from a time where it's very insulting, because it's basically to kind of describe that you're not strong. I don't believe that. I don't like that, but I don't like the negative connotation attached to it. I don't believe it's changed. I think the connotation remains the same. So I don't really like the undertones that are associated with it. But I have no shame in the way that I fought or could fight. I believe I'm totally accountable and able to be vicious and every bit of skillful as possible.
Personally, I love that phrase because I am that girl who fights like a girl. I think growing up, anytime you heard someone say that, because I was in sports, as a female, anytime you heard someone say that, it was an insult. Like they were leaning towards like, you don't run as fast, or you can't throw as hard, or you can't hit as hard, you can't choke people as well. So I think fights like a girl, to me, every time I hear that, I can't help but smile because I know exactly what that means. I think myself and a lot of the females in martial arts have really helped to change the idea and the emphasis behind what that means. So to me, to fight like a girl, one, you had to fight harder probably to get where you are in whatever it pertains to. You probably met adversity that not other people preparing for a fight meet, though we do all meet adversity. It's different for females. You probably had something going on in life. I know some of these female fighters, not myself, but some are moms, and so they're also like trying to take care of a family. So to me, to fight like a girl, it means that you fight harder, you fight better. No offense. And you fight anything that comes your way just to be able to fight. So to fight like a girl means like you fight harder than the rest, you fight better than the rest. You're trying to go further because you have to do that just to be considered as an equal.
I do believe that MMA has had a positive shift towards equality. Is it perfect? By no means is it perfect, but it has changed drastically. The one thing I will say is that I don't like how men and women, there's a pay discrepancy. If you look at, I don't think it's so much in the UFC as much as it is in boxing, because in the UFC there's a pay scale kind of situation where they basically base it off of how long you've been active. But there's definitely less earning power for a woman in the sport still. Boxing, it is so bad. It is so prevalent and it is horrendous.
I'm going to say women's MMA is starting to get to be closer to being equal. I think pioneers like Gina Carano, oddly enough, Cyborg, and then obviously Ronda Rousey pushed it further and further into the spotlight. And now you've got women fighting co-main events, main events, and that's awesome for me because I feel opportunity for me.
I definitely think that women's MMA is improving. It went from not existing in the UFC to 10 years later. We actually have 4 women's divisions. There's more female fighters now than there ever have been. I think that we're in the early stages of women's MMA. For men's MMA, we might be on like the 3rd or 4th generation of fighter. And I think the women's is about to see the next evolution, the next phase of female fighters. And I think that's going to bring in a lot more fans. It's going to be a lot more exciting fights. I think you're going to start to see some real athletes in the female divisions.
I do. I definitely do. Women's MMA, women's martial arts, just in general has made a huge shift. I mean, and honestly, it's not even accounted for yet just how far it's going, but thank you. We appreciate you making an account of it. Because it has, like I said, there were 3 women in 3 years in my experience that came and went. Now I have maybe 40% females in a class on a day. Some days we have more females than men, which means there are that many females preparing. You get a percentage of that will go into fighting, that will go into competing. So I definitely think there's a huge shift for females in martial arts, for the acceptance of female in martial arts. And I don't even think it's becoming an acceptance of it. I think it's just what it is now. Like, we are here, right? Hear us roar. So I just really believe that it's made a huge shift. It's going to continue to shift. And at some point, as we continue to move forward, and especially with different generations now taking over martial arts, that's no longer going to be a topic, because it had to be a topic right now in order to make that shift.
I am very fortunate in the position that I'm in right now. When I started training, I never expected to find so many other great women to train with. Both of my coaches right now are women, and I think that's fairly uncommon. I have a great MMA coach, Jessica Miramontes, who's a woman. I have a great jiu-jitsu coach, Chelsea Lyons, who's a woman. I have great other women to look up to who I train with. And I think it's really great to see the guys that I train with see our coach and really respect her. It doesn't matter to us that she's a woman. She has knowledgeable and valuable things to say. We all respect that and listen to it. We have, however, seen other people treat her not great because of her being a woman. And I think all of that just makes all of us want to work harder and prove that our coach being a woman doesn't make us any less of fighters, doesn't make her any less of a coach, and that we'll all succeed and do great things because of her. I think for female fighters to be treated equally, there needs to be more of us, because we need to have other women to fight against, to beat. You can't be the champion, or you can be the champion if you've only fought 3 other people, but no one's going to consider you a great if you only fought 3 other girls who don't know how to fight. For women's MMA to really gain acceptance, we need to have a lot of good women fight other good women so that we can have some fun and exciting fights that really get fans interested in the sport. A lot of the female divisions right now have one champion and then pretty much no one below that. Like, no one, a top 10 fighter in the women's division doesn't necessarily mean that you're that great. So we need to have more people to actually fill out those ranks to make it competitive and to make people interested in seeing who wins.
I believe that in order for women in fighting to be treated equally, number one, you're going to have to start promoting them equally to men. There is a draw. There's a certain level of competitiveness. Like every time a woman fights, it's a knockdown, drag out war. And so to say that there's no desire to watch that is asinine. They've just been able to get away with paying less for that. And because of that perpetual cycle of not promoting it properly and not paying the athletes properly, we have been basically deceived into accepting it as it is.
From a business standpoint, I think there needs to be like another Ronda Rousey, maybe with a little dash of Conor McGregor in there, who goes in and dominates, but then understands that just because they're great, they go into other things like boxing and be great there, and then just show like women can fight and can be beautiful and make a whole lot of money and possibly more than men. And I think it really depends on the female fighter and how far they want to go and how much they want to prove.
For any woman who is doubting themselves in martial arts, I firmly believe that martial arts is intended to heal people and to bring the best of themselves out. And I think everyone deserves that, no matter the men, women, whoever. Everyone deserves that. And to just don't worry about where you're ending up. Worry about where you are right now, and be mindful of your journey now, because it's a especially competitively, it's a very small window, and to enjoy that and to really pursue that with your whole heart, because if you do it in that way, you'll never regret the results.
For me, whenever another female wants to come in and train, whether it be boxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, it excites me, because I know that I could be there for them and help nurture them if they want to pursue it, or if they just want to do it as a side hobby on a Saturday for fun. I think other female athletes like me who started along the same time have that same mentality. So I think that helps grow the sport more. And then I think because of that, like more and more girls will want to come and play.
That's so hard to sum up. I just rip my heart out of my chest and give it to the females of the world in martial arts. Please keep going. Please never stop. Please don't give up. You're going to have days when you want to quit everything. And the biggest thing that I've learned, not just as a practitioner, but just as a female in general, especially in a martial arts and in a fighting world, is that the days that come where you want to give up the most, those are the days that you have to keep going. Because right on the other side of that is everything you've dreamed of and things you couldn't even possibly imagine would come into your experience, but had always hoped would be a part of your experience. So, just keep going. Don't give up, and reach out to other female martial artists if you feel like the people in your own group or in your own experience are not helping you to achieve the things that you want to achieve as a martial artist, as a fighter, because we're here for you and because we went through it. so that you can go through it better than we have.